I think it's really interesting. I've spent a lot of time working on this. In Denmark, I'm on the board in 2 welfare organizations, one for horses, actually one of the oldest horse welfare organizations in the world, and then one animal in general welfare organizations. We worked 5 years now on a document for our Danish ethics committee with some guidelines for horses, the use of horses in sport. It's like a 56 pages long document with lots of recommendations on how to use horses in sport. I think a lot of them are really, really good and interesting. One thing is, of course, this whole picture. I mean, and I've just recently done a presentation for our professionals, beriders, trainers in Denmark. And what was really interesting, because I made kind of a sort of a overview over the social media. And we also have to think about, I mean, like dressage, we are kind of a small community. And of course, we go to all the interesting sites and social media, what do I know? And what I found really, really interesting is that it is very kind of isolated. That doesn't mean the problem is not there, because we have to. And I think we, as dressage community, we really, really have to acknowledge that we have this problem, the problem of our perception and how people see our sport, because we are a very sort of small group, and we are, us today, we are kind of like the hardcore group of fans, but we also have people sort of around us, and they see our sport in a different way. And I have a little bit, I know it's a little bit a negative thing, but I think if we continue to go like we do now, and if we just continue to do like this, we won't have any dressage competitions in 20 years.
Yes.
And that's just me being a little bit negative, but if we don't do anything about it now, we won't have any dressage competitions in the future. It will be a little bit like the elephants in the circus. We will talk about it. You remember when we were children, we had elephants in the circus, and nowadays it's like a, could you even imagine? I mean, and it will be the same for horses in sports and racing and what do I know. So I think it's extremely important that we are aware about all these problems. One of the most important things is, of course, education, that we go out, educate, talk about this, and that we as a dressage community or equestrian community, that we are open and willing to talk about these problems. And as I said, I showed some videos that I found on YouTube and Facebook and what do I know from some websites in India or other countries in the world where they treat horses in very different from we do. Now we're talking blankets and supplements and all this, and that's just a completely different world. But they have maybe, on one of these posts I saw on Facebook, they had like 30,000 likes on that one, and for me that was pure animal cruelty, worst kind of, and they had 30,000 likes on that. And then some of these groups that we tend to see on our social media in our little world, you know, I mean, they have maybe 1,200 likes or something like that. But it's extremely important that we are aware of all that is going on now. And yeah.
What would you say is some of the most important things that we need to focus on?
He's the driver.
Yeah, I mean, that's also a good question, because how do we educate people? I mean, one of the things that is easy for people to look at, I mean, when we see a dressage competition going on, and there was actually also yesterday some concerns, issues raised by some people, is of course something about the contact, the frame of the horse. I mean, everybody can relate to that. If it's short in the neck, I mean, we're all ready to, I saw that, or open mouth, visible tongue, things like that. And that is just something for us as judges. We have to be stronger, more strict on things like that. We don't want to see that kind of riding anymore. So we have to educate the rider, and we as judges, we have to be strong
as he said, if we do nothing in 20 years, we will not have dressage anymore. The good news is there are a lot of big groups all around the world working on it. I can tell you that I'm working with one multinational, and they said, well, what would we need in order to make it more palatable for people who were raised in the city and never touched a horse in their life? And that's really our market, I hate to say it. What would we need? And that group came up with over 200 items that we have to change. And that's just what they did in 2 days. So we're going to see changes. We have to get out of the 1800s and at least get into the 1900s. So that's where we're at right now. There's going to be some changes.
There are other aspects of, if we're talking about the sort of social licensing, but within our sport that you, never mind what the city people think, that you think urgently need to be changed? What's the response?
I hesitate to say that. What I'd like to do is get all these groups together for them to say that. The way I look at it is, if your grandmother sees that on TV, is she going to say, ooh, something's wrong with that horse? And if your grandmother can see it, we need to change that. It's the uneducated who are going to determine where we go in our sport, unless we do.